Okay, Ches Baloscha, Pasuk Ches. The local par ben boko mit choso, solus blu bashomen. They should take a par and a meal offering, soles with the purest flour, blue bashomen, mingled with oil, par sheni, ben boko tikach lechatos. And the second par should be lechatos. So we're talking, we have two korbanos. One is a burnt offering, one is a chatos, a sin offering. So we have this interesting Rashi. The local par ben boko hu ola. It's a burnt offering. Next Rashi is a par sheni. Matla malu b'sheni lo malach ma ola lo necheles al chatos lo necheles. Normally, a chatos sibor, when you bring it, and it's speaking where it's brought on the outer mizbeach. The chatos, even though it's a korban tzibor, it's eaten by the kohanim. This chatos here was not eaten; it was burnt as the burnt offering was burnt. Ubezu smach lidvor betors kohanim. This was something out of the ordinary for this particular moment. Why? How do we see that this is an unusual type of sin offering for the idolatry? Because this is atoned for the idolatry of the Bechorim, because all Jews participated in the Chet Egel, and Leviim were the only ones who did not. So they should have brought a goat offering. A goat is the species brought for Avodah Zorah in Para-Ola, but here it was a par. It was not a soya. So just as it was not a bull, it was a bull and not a goat. Identically, although it's normally eaten, this was not eaten because we see this was an unusual type of chatos. Just as a species is not the usual species of a korban tzibur when there's avodah zorah, which is normally a goat, it's a bull. Identically, just as it's normally eaten, but since this is not the usual sin offering for avodah zorah in this particular instance, therefore it was not eaten. Now the question is, why was it a par? Why was it a bull? If normally for a korban tzibur, when there's avodah zorah, on a communal level, you bring a soyer, a goat, why over here, in this particular instance, they bought a par? They bought an ox. That's the question. So I was thinking, if you remember, we'd spoken the Medrash, we find that the only three species which qualify for korban are short kesaves, the ox, the sheep, and the goat. And why is the shor the first one mentioned? The ox. So you would say, because of the three, it's the largest species. An ox is larger than a sheep and a goat. But Chazal tell us no. And it quotes a pasuk that since the nations of the world, they said to Klal Yisrael, you people are fooling yourselves. And this is really what the Greeks had said. And the Maral speaks about this. The Greeks had issued a decree that every Jewish home had to take the horn of an ox and write on it, we have no share in the God of Israel. So the Maral explains what did they want to communicate to the Jews. So he says, you have a marriage between two individuals, and initially the relationship is phenomenal, but over time, things could happen, which God forbid, which would cause the relation to deteriorate, and the woman commits adultery. It happens. But what happens if the woman commits adultery under the chuppah? They haven't even begun living life together, and she's already committing adultery. What does it say about the relationship? It tells you there was never a relationship. So the Greeks were saying to the Jews, you people feel you're the chosen nation. You feel you have a relation with God. How could you have a relation with God? From day one, within the 40 days, after hearing the 10 commandments, you're already involved with a golden calf. So don't delude yourselves. Therefore, there's nothing wrong if you embrace paganism, because you have no relationship. Chazal say, the answer is because we find that regarding initially the Chet Egel, the words which were used is Ela Elohecha Yisrael. this is your God, Israel. Meaning, who initiated the Chet Egel? It was the Erev Rav, it was the rabble. The Jews themselves were not interested. It's only because they were drawn into it, therefore they followed suit. So therefore, although there's liability, but to say that there's no relationship, it was entrapment, it was seduction. But how do we confirm that? Has Hashem confirmed that reality and tells the world that the Jews are what the relationship initially is a quality relationship, despite the fact of what happened? Because when we speak about the species that are brought as a korban, the first species which is mentioned is the ox. The ox is the first one to indicate and confirm that the Jews were not the ones who initiated this. And therefore God accepts that as the primary of the three species. Therefore it's mentioned first. That's Chazal, that's the Mishnah. So what I'm saying here, why were the Leviim chosen to replace the Bechorim? Originally, the Bechorim, the firstborn, were meant to be the Kohanim. But because all tribes were involved in the Chet Egel, they were all tainted. The only tribe that was not involved in the Chet Egel to any degree was Shevet Levi. When Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mid Lashem Elai, who's for God should come with me, and they killed idolaters, it was all Shevet Levi. Therefore, the Leviim were the only ones qualified to replace the Bechorim, to be the efficiency of Hashem. How do we confirm this? But you're part of the Jewish people. Because when you bring an ox, when you bring a sin offering for Avodah Zarah, you know what you normally bring? You normally bring a goat. They bring a par. But a par, you don't bring a par. A par is the ox. The ox is the Chet Egel. God is saying here, despite this is not the regular species, the species is normally a goat, we accept the ox to confirm that the Leviim were not involved in the Chet Egel as the rest of the Jews were involved. Just as initially it was accepted as the primary species that to indicate entrapment, here it's to confirm and indicate that the Leviim had no relevance to the Chet Egel. Therefore, here the sin offering that they're bringing to atone for the sin of Klal Yisrael, that they should be able to be installed as the efficiency of Hashem was the ox and not the goat. The Torah, this is Perek Tes, Pasuk Aleph. V'daber Shel Moshe b'midbar Sinai b'shana hashenis. Hashem speaks to Moshe in the Sinai desert, the second year of Tzeis Meretz Mitzrayim, b'chodesh harishon leimor. And he tells them the laws pertain to the Pesach. There were two individuals who were contaminated with the dead. And they were not able to participate in the Korban Pesach because they were contaminated. And they came before Moshe and Aaron on that day. This is Erev Pesach. This is the 14th of Nisan. And they said to him, we were contaminated with the dead, with the human remains. Why should we be excluded? Not to be able to bring the korban of Hashem in its proper time. So Israel is part of the Jewish people. That was the claim. Why should we be excluded? So over here, there's a beautiful Sefarno. The Sefarno explains the basis for the question. Now, how did these two individuals, how did they become contaminated? When Nadav and Avihu was struck down and their remains were in the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, Tzov ben Uziel and his cousin, remove them from the sanctuary. They must be removed because on the day that the Mishkan was installed, it's inappropriate that the remains of human beings should be in there. So remove it. And they removed it. That's how they became contaminated. So when they followed the directive of Moshe Rabbeinu, what did they actually do? They fulfilled the mitzvah. We have a principle which is stated in Pirkei Avos, mitzvah goreres mitzvah. When a person does one mitzvah, it engenders to do another mitzvah. So they were asking, how is it possible? Here we do a mitzvah directly, as Moshe had instructed, which is the Kiddush Hashem, to remove the remains of the human being from the Mishkan, from the sanctuary, and it should cause us to be denied a mitzvah. It's contrary to the whole concept of what a mitzvah is supposed to bring about. Rather than bringing about more, it diminished us. That was the difficulty they were asking. Lama di Gora. Why? Because of our state should we be excluded? Just the opposite. It definitely should not bring about an exclusion. Because Moshe Rabbeinu heard and appreciated the question. What did he say? Wait, and you'll hear what Hashem will command you to do. The question is a good question. He says, I have no answer. I have to consult with the source. So Rashi says, we'll see in a moment, over here, in Pasuk Zayin, the portion of Pesach Sheni should have been communicated without anybody initiating the Pesach Sheni to be mentioned. The whole Torah is said over, it's communicated to Moshe Rabbeinu. Pesach Sheni should have been communicated to Moshe Rabbeinu. Why did Hashem allow that these individuals, only through their inquiry, it came about? Why? These two individuals, they merited that this parsha should come about through them. Because God brings merit to the meritorious. That's the reason why this was not initially given over by Moshe Rabbeinu. Because since these people had this special merit, Hashem wanted they should be meritorious. And to have a parsha to come about through a person, that's the ultimate schus, that's the ultimate merit. Okay? That's what was not said from Moshe Rabbeinu. Now the question is this. What merit did they have? What merit did they have? I mean, people have many merits. What special merit did they have that this portion of the Torah should come about through them and it should not come directly without any inquiry through Moshe Rabbeinu? So what I said was, which I think is the correct understanding, if a person normally would be contaminated and he's told, this year you can't participate, you come back next year. It's okay. I tried, I wanted, can't. But if a person actually is pained that he's denied something which he wanted to participate, and that is the basis for the question, and they only came upon this understanding they should not be denied mitzvah goreres mitzvah, because they said if we did a mitzvah, we were waiting for another mitzvah to come about. Not that we should be denied a mitzvah. That was the merit. The merit was they had such a quest and such a thirst and such an anticipation for doing the will of Hashem. That itself is a source that they merited that Pesach Sheni should come through them. That's the Gal Mususa Yidei Zakai. That's what I was thinking. Where did we find something similar? Avram Avinu at the age of 137 was told to bring Yitzchak as a burnt offering. He's going to the Akedah. It's a 3-day trek. Satan understands that if Avram succeeds, that merit will silence his prosecution forever. So he comes as a raging river, and Avram Avinu literally is drowning. The water's up to his neck. And Avram Avinu raises his eyes to Hashem and says, Bo mayim ad nofesh. The water has come to a point where I'm about to drown. I want to do your will. You're not allowing me to do your will. If it would have been us, anybody less than Avram Avinu, what would have they said? Hashem, we tried our best. You understand? That he's bringing the child that was born to him at the age of 100. That this child was told is going to be his successor, the future. And now Hashem says, bring him up as a burnt offering. And he remained silent all along. And now all of a sudden he has an opportunity. And Hashem says, it's the child that was born to in your old age who you love. Now that he has an opportunity to extricate himself from this, I've done my best. That's not what Avram said. Avram says, I want to do your will. Allow me to do your will. What does that mean? Despite his feelings meant nothing. All that meant was the will of Hashem. That was part of the schus. That he, despite the fact he was pushing forward, despite every reason why he could extricate himself, legitimately, Avram Avinu wasn't interested in extricating himself. That's the schus. That's the schus. Avram Avinu, at the third day of his circumcision, there were no wayfarers. Hashem takes the sun out of its sheath. It was the hottest day in the history of existence. He's standing at the entrance of his tent looking in every direction. He doesn't see orchim. He's not able to do the mitzvah hospitality. He's pained. So Rashi says, Chazal, Hashem wanted to give him a respite, that he should not be overwhelmed with hospitality. He wanted to give him the respite. But when he saw that he was pained, that the orchim were not coming, Hashem brought angels in human form. So we discussed what was the pain. What was the pain? The pain was, we explained, that it was known, as the Chazal tell us, there was no pagan who came into Avram Avinu's tent as a pagan who did not leave as a committed monotheist. That means every moment Avram Avinu wasn't able to participate in Hachnosis Orchim, the Chil Hashem, that these people believe the world is attributed to the sun, the moon, or all these deities, not to Hashem. That's the most profound level of Chil Hashem. Avram Avinu cannot tolerate it. Could not tolerate the pain of Chil Hashem. As a result of that, Hashem brought angels in human form. It's he's 100 years old, just circumcised. The third day is the most difficult day of the circumcision. And now all of a sudden he has the ability to have a break, to have a respite. Avram Avinu is not interested in a respite. Every moment the people don't come, it's Chil Hashem. To be pained for Chil Hashem, because he exists only for God's glory, it gave him no moment's rest. When Hashem brought the angels in human form, what did he do? He ran towards them. And he approached them, they should accept his hospitality. He showed eitz, lie under the shade of my tree, take water to wash your feet. In the merit of every one of these things, we had the Anei HaKavod in the mitzvah for 40 years. We had the Berushal Miriam for 40 years. We had the month for 40 years. If Avram Avinu wouldn't have been pained and he would have been okay with the respite, what would have been? We wouldn't have had the Anei HaKavod, we wouldn't have had the Berushal Miriam, and we wouldn't have had the month. So why did we merit this? This is also, it's within the context of Bagal Society, the Zakai. To feel denied when you're denied spiritual opportunity, that's the ultimate level. When a person is famished and hungry and he wants to eat, he has to satisfy his hunger. He's consumed by that. Avram Avinu was consumed by doing the will of Hashem, regardless of the difficulty. El Tzov ben Uziel, when he said, Lomani Gora, why should we be denied? These people lived to be involved in doing a mitzvah. It seems it doesn't sit well with us. We feel denied. And because of that, they merited, that was the schus, although the whole Torah was communicated through Moshe Rabbeinu, this parsha was communicated through these individuals who said, Lomani Gora, why should we be denied the participation of the Korban Pesach? At the end of Bamidbar, we have the laws of inheritance. That if there's males and females, who's the only heir? Only the males. But if there are no males, the daughters are heirs. But a daughter does not inherit if there's a son. And there's a whole order of inheritance stated in the Torah. Now, who initiated that? How did it come about? Through Bnos Tzlachot. Slavkot was the person who was put to death in the Midbar because he violated Shabbos, but he was not part of the Adas Korach. So they came and they said, why should we be denied the inheritance of our father, although we're females? So because they had such a love for the land, and they did not back down. And Moshe Rabbeinu had said at the time of when he installed the various echelons of courts, he said, the more difficult thing you bring to me, therefore, the no Slavchod, they merited that the portion of inheritance with the priority should come through the no Slavchod. That's also Magal Mushal Yidei Zakai. The no Slavchod had a special schus. The laws of inheritance were going to be set in either case. It was on the book, so to say. Except it came about because of an incident of the daughters of Tzlofchot, claiming that a right to their father's inheritance, although they were women. Same idea. Trying to get it. You know, the Ramak, Moshe Kudaviro, cites, it's based on Rav Chaim Vital or the Zohar, that Hashem is called Melech Oluv, the disgraced king. Why is Hashem called the disgraced king? Disgraced. If a person, God forbid, wants to commit adultery, we say every day, that we exist, that we function, in every aspect of our function, what do we function? Because God wills it. Now, God endowed man with the ability to make choices. It's called koach habchira, free choice. If a person wants to act and defy God on the most extreme level, does he have that ability? And it says yes. So if a person wants to take a knife and God forbid, and plunge into another person's heart and kill him, why do you have the power to lift your arm? Why does that knife have the ability to penetrate somebody else's heart and take his life? Because God wills that your arm should exist. You should have the power, the knife should be there, and the person's chest should be able to be penetrated and to puncture his arm, kill him. But you realize, that means God is willing something which is contrary to what he wants you to do. It says, Lo tirtzach, thou shalt not commit murder. But the answer is, because what's bechira? God gives us choice to do as we please, because when we do the right thing is attributed to us, because the only reason why we do the right thing is because we chose to do the right thing. But if we only do the right thing because we have no choice but to do the right thing, it's unrelated to our initiative, because it's meant to be that we have to do the right thing. But since the person could do the wrong thing, so the reason why God allows you to do the wrong thing, even participates in it, so you should be in a position that when you do the right thing, it should be attributed to you. So therefore, he says, see, God puts himself that he's disgraced. To give you the upside, he puts himself in the most extreme level of the downside, so you should be the beneficiary of the upside. Person, God forbid, wants to commit adultery. To have that ability, the person has to have a certain function. God gives the person that function to be able to do that act of adultery. As extreme, as terrible as it may be. But God participates in that. Again, it's the same thing. Because without that, when you choose not to, when you choose to control temptation, that control is attributed to yourself because you could have lost control, which also would have been attributed to you.
I mean, Rabbi, that's a slippery slope because, in other words,